Welcome to the Totally Insensitive podcast, where we give our real takes on the entertainment industry, politics, pop culture, and more.
I love the show, guys. You're awesome.
Listen, my whole family loves it, man.
They're the first thing I turn on.
Think you can handle it?
Yep, I'm ready.
Well, shut up and sit down, because the show starts right now.
Welcome back to Totally Insensitive podcast on the Insensitive Network. I am your host, Matt. So last week we did not have an episode. Took a break for the holidays. The week before that we had an episode and a bonus episode. In this bonus episode we talked a little bit about the impeachment and some political items and, well, my views on those political items. I want to thank you guys for listening and hearing me out for what I have to say. I hope everybody had a very nice holiday, and for those that celebrate Christmas, I hope you had a very Merry Christmas. I went home to see some of my family and see my cousin who's getting married soon, and it was very nice. It was very relaxing, and it's good to see family every once in a while. So this podcast, it's just me this time. And I want to talk about one of the things I usually do at the beginning of the week. It helps me find topics for shows, and I just like to see what's out there. So I go on Twitter, and Twitter has an Explore category with different subcategories like For You, News, Sports, Fun, and Entertainment. So I'll stick my head in the news category, and I'll read some of the Twitter quote news. And I won't really open them. I'll kind of just see what's going on, and unless I see something that, really sparks my interest. So I think I'm going to read some of those and just give my initial view. I will warn you, almost none of these are positive. Not a single one. So we'll keep that in mind. I'm going to ignore the first item because that's actually what I want to talk about after our midway point. I want to talk about the white settlement shooting. But right now we're going to talk about this first item. Muncie stabbing suspect faces multiple federal hate crime charges. Interesting. The icon's a black man. Don't know anything about that. Someone stabbed somebody. Next item. U.S. military carries out airstrikes in Iraq and Syria against Kataib Hezbollah. My understanding is they probably killed the ISIS leader, and now there's a new ISIS leader, or terrorist leader. Never ends. So they're just bombing shit to bomb shit. Earlier today, musical comedian Neil Innes has died, 75. No idea who that is, but he was a musical comedian. Trump and Obama tied for most admired man in 2019, according to new poll. That's interesting. I'm going to click that. What poll? Gallup's annual poll. Gallup interviewed more than 1,000 adults living in all 50 states and the District of Columbia. 1,000 out of the 320 million people in the United States. It's a very good demographic. Very good grasp. Idiots. Blanket of fog in Delhi impacts hundreds of flights. Delhi, India. It was very foggy. Planes couldn't take off. Interesting. Support pours in after John Lewis reveals cancer diagnosis. Who the hell is John Lewis? Oh, a congressman. We all know how I feel about old political figures. Who cares? Chinese court sentences early rain church pastor to 9 years in prison for inciting subversion. I'm surprised there are even churches in China. He was convicted on charges of inciting subversion of state power, was deprived of his political rights for 3 years, and fined basically $7,000 US. China has Protestantism, apparently. I'm surprised. That one's not fun. The one that I said wasn't fun is Bolivia's interim government expels diplomats from Mexico and Spain. So it looks like even the Bolivians don't like Mexicans. Who do? Taliban ruling council agrees to temporary ceasefire in Afghanistan. Wow. Those Talibans. What a bunch of nice people. Electing not to blow shit up. Sanders closes in on $5 million contribution while Warren's fundraising lags. I just realized this is completely stupid. And you're just listening to me babble about the shit that I see and the first thought that pops in my mind. Houston police appeal for information after multiple people were shot while filming music video. Well, it's Houston. It's Texas. 2 killed, 7 injured in drive-by, quote, ambush while filming rap music video. Nice. Let's see. Sports reporter Carly McCord was among the 5 killed in Louisiana plane crash. None of these are new, like any bit happy. Prisoner exchange. Anti-citizenship law protesters turned to traditional street drawings in India. Oh, just like India. Let's draw pictures and sit in a circle. Graphic designer died. Mike Pompeo will visit Ukraine this week to meet with President Zelensky. That's nice of him. Undercover police officer infiltrate a protest in a mall in Hong Kong and arrested 14 people. What a good guy. Elon Musk's idea to build tunnels under cities to solve traffic sounds familiar, this one says. He caught flack for pitching the idea of building super safe, earthquake-proof tunnels under cities to solve traffic, which sounds an awful lot like a subway. The tunnels would be for zero-emission vehicles only. It's a subway, but for cars. But everyone's giving him shit. That's kind of funny. The one thing I don't like is every time I click an article, I step back and it just mixes up all the articles again. Samoa had a measles outbreak that's now over. Well, that's something that's good, I guess. Ancient Mayan palace unearthed in eastern Mexico. That's cool. Wow. They discovered the building's remains during a reforestation project. So now they're going to rip out a shit ton of trees just to dig up this old hunk of shit. So that's interesting. Yeah, I don't understand. It's funny, they break news down into its own category, and then there's sports and fun. Under the fun category, what slang or phrases need to be left behind in the 2010s as we move to the next decade? Let's see. There's no actual poll, I don't think. At least I'm not seeing. Someone said slay or amazeballs. All the feels. Obs or totes. Doggo or heckin' good. I'm quite fond of that one. We're going to leave doggo and heckin' good in 2020 with us. Let's see. Someone said, my biggest takeaway from this thread is that a lot of people don't know what slang is or when the 2010s were. I'm very much not surprised that the general public could not handle a single tweet. Yeah, so Twitter's an interesting place. And I don't get my news from Twitter, but I definitely get some topics from Twitter. I can say in the last 6 or 7 podcasts, most of my topics started on Twitter. Because you can really just run into anything on here. Also, if you're on Twitter, you might as well follow @IN. Let's start that over. @IN_net_official. And that's where you can find the Insensitive Network Twitter. It's a nice Twitter. I got links on there to the website, to the store. It's where we post all our featured podcasts, all our own episodes, all the episodes of the Dina Jean Show. And we are actually currently looking for 2 new podcast hosts. The network is going to produce 2 more shows. So if you have a request on a genre, or you even want to host a show yourself, shoot us a message on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, wherever you want. And we'll see if it works. All right. Let's take a break, and then we'll get back to the show and after these words. Welcome back, everybody. I just want to take a second to talk about the featured podcast of the month, Bare Naked Truth Podcast. So these guys, there's I want to say four guys. They started their podcast in the summer of 2019. This is Tio, Premise, Maze. Am I missing someone? I could have swore there were 4 of them, but there's only 3. So these guys, they launched their first episode in September, titled Tio's Black Card, where Maze and Premise ridicule Tio for things that he should have either done or experienced as a black man. It's a very interesting episode. I recommend you go listen to it. Today, the Bare Naked Truth podcast continues to grow, and they have now made their way to YouTube, and soon will also have audio podcasts available. So if you want to check them out, please go check them out on Facebook.com/BNT podcast. It's Facebook.com/BNT podcast. And this group of dudes, they take pride in not being politically correct, kind of like us. Just because they feel that, things don't need to be sugar-coated. And we really relate to that. So definitely go check them out. They're worth the listen. Also, like I said earlier in the cast, we're looking for 2 individuals to host a podcast. You will end up having your own podcast, but we want to produce 2 more shows. In any genre, any topic, you just pick it and talk about it. So shoot us a message. You can apply on the website, www.insensitivenetwork.com. You could shoot us a message on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. You can email us at info@insensitivenetwork.com. Your options to contact us are pretty much out the ass, so just give us a shout out. Let us know if you're interested. And let's get back to the show. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. So, earlier in the show, you remember the first item I talked about on Twitter news was about the White Settlement Church shooting. White Settlement is a town in Texas, and there was a church, the West Freeway Church of Christ. And I really don't like how these news sources identify shootings. When I think of a shooting, I think of, like a school shooting, or someone went into a mall and started shooting up a place, or, bigger shootings. This guy basically just went into a church and shot 2 people. It's not really a shooting. I guess there is no real way of categorizing these things, but I don't consider this a shooting. If you don't know what happened, I'm going to go over it a little bit. I have 3 articles from 3 different news sources, and they all kind of talk about different things. So the first one I'm going to talk about is an article from the Dallas Morning News, and it's kind of about what happened. So I apologize if it sounds like I'm reading. I don't want to give any false information, or I'm going to paraphrase as much as I can. But so Sunday morning, a gunman killed 2 people during a morning service at a church, the West Freeway Church of Christ in White Settlement, Texas. Almost immediately after this man started opening fire, members of the congregation shot and killed him in the church. So, police in White Settlement, about 8 miles west of Fort Worth, Texas, were called in before 11 a.m. So this guy did this fairly early to the Church of Christ at 1900 South Las Vegas Trail. 2 members who were part of the church's security team opened fire on the gunman. So, this church has its own security team. Curious as to why. A spokeswoman reported that the gunman and one of his victims had died at a hospital. The second victim was resuscitated after going into cardiac arrest on the way to the hospital. I will say one of the articles that I'm going to talk about later, they talk about the 2 people. They're both well in their 70s. So the one got shot or was scared and went into cardiac arrest. The person that was resuscitated actually died later after being resuscitated. Let's see. Now they kind of get to talk about some of the victims, and I guess one of the daughter of one of the victims was talking about her father who was killed, and she told the station that she ran to her father after she realized he had been shot. She said, quote, "I was just holding him, telling him I loved him and that he was going to make it." 2 other people were treated at the scene for minor injuries when they hit their heads while they were ducking for cover. They got maybe 1.5 feet between the pews, so I'm very much not surprised that someone smacked their noggin off the fucking back end of the pew. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, speaking at the evening news conference, highlighted changes in state law that ensured the right to carry concealed weapons in churches. If he hadn't done that, I'm going to guess that this would have been a lot worse, and it would have actually been, in my eyes, considered a shooting. The FBI said Sunday evening that the gunman had been arrested in different jurisdictions, but declined to go into details about any charges he'd face. And we're going to talk about that soon, what he was actually charged with. So, I guess next I want to jump to CNN article, just so you can get an idea of what CNN actually fucking talks about. Here's the title of the article: How White Settlement, the site of the deadly church shooting, got its name. So they don't really give a shit about the people that got shot. And I'm going to tell you why they're actually writing this article once I read some of the phrases. The North Texas town of White Settlement, the site of a deadly church shooting over the weekend, was built in the 1840s. Keep that in mind, 1840s. A population of nearly 18,000 people. The land was historically occupied by the Comanche, the Kankawa, and the Katic tribes, according to Norris Chambers, founder of the White Settlement Historical Museum. When an influx of white settlers began moving into the area in the mid-19th century, the indigenous people named the land after its new residents. Chambers said the white settlers decimated bison populations to drive the Native Americans onto reservations, and few were left by the turn of the century. This is all exact quotes. You can go look up the article and read it yourself. So, not only do they not give a shit about some people being shot in a church, but they're also trying to make you feel bad and feel guilty about the name of a fucking town. A town that was named in the 1840s. Here's the best part. The town almost changed its name. More than 82% of its residents are white, and only 0.5% of it are Native Americans. In 2005, they held a proposal to change the name, which was ultimately defeated by a margin of 9-1 among the 2,500 residents who voted. 2,500 people voted of the 18,000, and it still didn't pass. And I'm guessing the 2,500 are the only ones that actually gave a shit. Today, our name keeps us from having a meaningful conversation with potential partners, said Grant Jackson, a member of the Choctaw tribe of Oklahoma, who moved willingly to white settlement in 1970. So 130 years after it was formed and named, someone moves there and then decides to bitch and complain, electively choosing to go to the town. Then Mayor James Ouse told NPR the name reflected the town's racial demographics and insisted no residents considered it racist. I, quote, have never had a minority approach me about the name, end quote, he said in 2005. So, it's just funny how CNN just blatantly makes shit up, finds an excuse to talk about something else. It's a nice little background story, but how much of it is actually true, and who actually gives a shit? Not many. So thanks, Scotty Andrew of CNN, for wasting everybody's time. So we're going to kick back and we're going to talk about, I shouldn't say kick back because it's not very relaxed, but the last article is about the shooter. It's an NBC article. So Keith Thomas Kinnunen, who is a River Oaks resident, he is 43 years old, and he is the one that fatally shot 2 people at the church. Then he was gunned down by church security. At the time, he was wearing a disguise, including a fake beard, when he stood up, pulled a shotgun from his clothing, and opened fire inside the church, killing 2 people. 64-year-old Anton Wallace, a church deacon, and 67-year-old Richard White, who was just a person in the church. Volunteer church security immediately approached Coonan and returned fire, killing him. So apparently, people in the parishioners of the church were very surprised that people in the church were actually armed. They said, not that there were people that were in there that were armed that they were surprised, but that there were so many that were armed, and that the individual that that had shot up the church made them feel uncomfortable. They immediately realized this person was out of place. And you can look up this guy's mugshot. I mean, he looks like any other skinhead white dude who has nothing better to do. They don't know his motive, but the special agent in charge of the FBI's Dallas field office said the gunman was relatively transient but had roots in the area. Later in the article, they talk about how he was, homeless, and he just kind of travels around, and he has a pretty big criminal record, including charges of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon in 2009 and theft of property in 2013. So here's a guy who's just doing whatever the fuck he wants because he's mentally sick, running around in the streets, and I mean, these are the people that need to be fucking locked up. This is bad. He was also arrested in 2016 for possession of an illegal weapon in New Jersey after he was found taking pictures outside an oil refinery, which he said was a, quote, interesting sight. Now, that sounds pretty fucking skeptical. And if this was, I don't know, maybe 30 years ago, this guy would have been locked up. He would have been locked up, put in an asylum of some sort. He wouldn't be on the streets. That's for fucking sure. When he was arrested in New Jersey, he also had a warrant for his arrest in Oklahoma. So this guy's just cruising around the country, breaking laws, being a downright trashy person. It's surprising he hasn't ended up, I don't know, where I live or where you live. But I'm sure there's someone just as fucking crazy where we both live. So that's pretty much the gist of this. I'll call it news. A psychopath went into a building and shot people. And it seems like very often, actually very, very often lately, this kind of crap's been happening, whether it be small or large, whether it be a shooting, a mass shooting, or just some dude popping off in a church. And it just sucks. I mean, like when I was reading the Twitter news stories, it's just negative news. There's nothing good in the news anymore. There's nothing nice. There's nothing worth hearing. There's just dark stories and shitty people in the news. So you can't even trust your news outlets. You can't go and listen to all this shit. You can't read it because, one, who the fuck knows if it's even true anymore? How do we even know this actually happened? I wasn't there. You weren't there. Someone could come tell me it happened, but I wasn't there. So how can I take your word for it? So we're sitting on our phones, sitting on our computers, sitting in front of our televisions, listening and reading these news articles that may or may not even be true. I would like to remind people what news stands for. News stands for, wow, that's not good. But I'm fairly certain the N in news stands for news. But the E stands for entertainment. Then we have weather and sports. Now, none of that really sounds important. Entertainment has to do with the rich. Weather, all right, I'll give it to weather. Weather's pretty important. We kind of need weather reporting, even though most of the time it's false. And then there's sports. And I don't think people really give a shit about sports. It's something to distract you. News is a fat joke. That's why I recommend, like I said in past podcasts, just do your research. Look stuff up. Don't just get all your shit from one, quote, news network. That's why I talked about 3 articles. And I don't trust shit. I don't trust any of them, honestly. CNN's a joke. NBC's wishy-washy. And I don't live in Dallas, so I don't know how factual Dallas Morning News is. But I assume since it's in Texas, they were pretty factual on their coverage of the shooting. So it was a very positive episode. And I promise you guys, they're not all going to be like this. It was kind of left on my own for this one. So I wanted to talk about something that I felt comfortable talking about on my own. Next week, I believe we're going to be talking about Star Wars, the Star Wars movie that just came out, and Mandalorian. So if you haven't seen those, and you plan on seeing those, I recommend waiting to listen to the next episode. However, if you don't care, or you have seen them, please tune in next week. Should have a good amount of guests on to just kind of chat about how we felt about the movies and some of the things that happened, and it's going to be a good one. I definitely like the episodes where we talk about things like that. So tune in next week, folks. Please go follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Go check out the website. It's pretty cool. All right. See you next week.